Hello, all, and welcome back to the Hundred Years' War with Arlena. How are you doing?
I am well. How are you?
I'm as well as can be expected. So, where are we going today?
Today we ended last time in the Battle of Sluys, and this time we are going to move from the Battle of Sluys through time. We're going to do a time portal, and it's going to take us all the way through the early 1340s up to 1346 and the Battle of Crecy.
Alrighty. And I'm glad that you have to pronounce these things because old English names are just not my forte, and old French names are even worse. Um,
Yeah, they are. They're pretty bad.
they're about as bad as trying to pronounce things in Russian. Uh,
Yeah, I don't even want to attempt some of those.
oh, I'll tell you, my old co host, Richard. He loved when we were doing the episodes on Stalin
Mhm.
because he'd make sure that I had a million Russian things to pronounce because he knew I couldn't. I sucked at it. Like
I
he'd,
was
he'd
doing it on
throw every
purpose.
Russian name, the old name, not the layman term. He'd throw them all in there, and I'd just curse them every time doing the recording because I have to re-record it 14 times to get it right. Yeah, but yeah,
Oh, wow. Yeah, so this time I made sure to put a note to myself that it is Edward and not Henry.
yeah. Slight radio edit.
Yes, yes, yes. So just a quick recap. From about 1154 to 1204, England owned more of France than the French did. They owned Gascony, Normandy. Uh, geez, I freaking don't even remember all of them that they owned, but they
They,
owned
they,
more
they
of.
had they had quite a bit of real
Yeah,
estate.
they owned a lot of France.
Yeah.
And by 1224, all were back in French control except for Gascony.
Hmm.
Um, which, excuse me, which was kind of a big deal because Gascony being right there on the coast and helping with the English trade, that was really what was important to the English.
Yeah.
Um, and they hated losing their land, but shit happens. So,
Yeah. Stuff
uh,
happens.
yeah. So one of the biggest things during this time is the medieval way of battle was slightly changed. So they went from just meeting each other on the field to when England invaded France, they would go into the cities, the larger towns, cities, and everything, and they would burn them down. They would burn all the fields and the structures and the surrounding areas. And what that would do is it would put economic pressure on the King of France.
Yeah.
And the people would question the King of France. Why aren't you doing anything, man?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is horrible. You're taxing us to death, but you're not doing anything about these daggone English. They're not coming in here and destroying everything.
Yeah. It was
So,
something along the same lines that the Vikings did to the English.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Um, so in January of 1340, Edward had declared himself King of England and France while he was in Flanders, because at that point he had fought his way through to Flanders and took Flanders and said, "You know what? I am now the King of England and France."
Yeah.
And of course, he said it in French because up until later on in history, almost everything that was spoke in the English court was French. The
Yeah.
only ones that spoke English were peasants.
Yeah. Imagine that.
So,
Huh?
yeah, and at this time, France also had a bigger navy, and this was when they were continually attacking the coastline of England. Different little ports, the French Navy would go in and they would attack. And so after Flanders, when Edward III declared himself king, of France and England, he went back to England and raised taxes for the war effort.
Yeah.
What he did was because of the French having the larger navy, he gutted 150 cogs, which is converted merchant vessels
Yeah.
that were gathered in Suffolk, and they prepared for any French attacks. And we're talking like 200 ships and 150 ships.
Yeah. Like
S-
traditionally what would end up happening was the French would build really good ships,
Mhm.
but the British were always either A, better,
Mhm.
or they just had better commanders,
Mhm.
such as, Trafalgar. Uh but yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. Sorry.
That's all
You
right.
can you can edit stuff out, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and do a couple things, but yeah.
Okay.
Or I'll just leave it in and people can see how crazy we are.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And see, it's better when it's live.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't be live during the daytime Monday through Friday, so this is what we got to work with, y'all. So, Edward is itching for a fight. He's itching for a fight, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go over there and I want to get rid of these French because they're getting on my nerves. This King of France, this Philip, he's irritating me.
Mhm.
He needs to be gone. What are we gonna do about it?" And he's looking around and he's saying, "Come on, everybody, let's go. I'm your king. I'm calling you forth, and we are gonna go over there and we're gonna kick some butt."
Yeah.
Well, everybody was like scared because they knew the French Navy was tough and well-oiled machine at this time. So Edward looks at his people that are gathered near him, his lords, and he quote, "I shall cross the sea, and those who are afraid may stay home."
Yeah.
Well, that was an insult to end all insults.
Yep. That'll get you going.
So they all decided to go ahead and go with him because they
Yep.
didn't want to be labeled as poussoirs.
Yeah. 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 Called
So
their bluff, as in other words.
yeah, yeah. Basically, that's exactly what Edward did. A smart man, smart man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they go and end up killing, but an estimated 10 to 20,000 French,
Yeah.
just going through and destroying parts of the navy and going hitting the land and burning everything and just kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing. So he goes through all that. He wasn't there very long because Edward has to return to England because there's now uprisings over his tax.
Well, of course.
Yeah, they're not happy with his tax.
No, you raise
No.
taxes, you getting shit. Yeah,
Yeah. And so he
that
goes
hasn't
back
changed.
over to England to take care. Yeah. To take care of and settle everything down because, you can't have a war on two fronts. You can't have your,
No, no, no.
you know,
That's bad.
trying to fight France and take France as a whole, and then have your people in England uprising and trying to fight you because of your taxes. They're like, this
Yeah.
is crazy. I can't do all this. So he goes back and quells all of that. And at this point, the war becomes more of a proxy war
Okay.
because Duke John III of Brittany died in 1341 with no heir.
Oh,
His brother, John of Malfoy, and his niece, Jean of Bellois, um, are both vying for his place.
okay.
So you got a man and you got a woman
Yeah.
fighting. So,
Oh,
you
that
know,
never ends well.
that's never a good thing. So, all of this surrounding big powers. over in France were drawn to this internal battle.
Yeah.
And England, all the duchies around it, the merchants, and the peasants supported John.
Okay.
France and the nobility wanted Jean, his niece.
Yeah.
So, they wanted the dude to be in charge, and the French was like, well, we can't be on the same side as the English, so we're going to go for the chick.
Yeah.
And we all know how this is going to end because, yeah, women just didn't hold power back then.
Yeah, just talk to Queen Mary, Queen of Scots.
Yeah, it
Um,
just wasn't something that happened,
no.
especially in France, because France was a absolute primogeniture. So it was male line only, and only the
Mhm.
firstborn male of the firstborn male of the firstborn male, and so
Yep.
on and so forth. So, Edward decides he's going to sail to Brittany with a small navy. He destroys all of the French opposition on his way there.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about a badass, you
Yeah.
want to dive into more details than just the Hundred Years' War. Edward III is a great king to start with
Yeah. Yeah.
because he was an all-around badass,
Yeah. Yeah. He
all
didn't take
around,
shit from nobody.
through and through. And uh, the papal envoy. So we all know that at this time everyone was Catholic,
Yes.
and the papal authority was the authority above all.
Yep.
So the papal envoy uh, gets a truce from England and France for 3 years, and Edward returns to England in January 1343. Pope Clement VI was the one at this time, and he tried to negotiate a treaty to last longer in 1344, but England and France would not agree to the terms that were offered. England
Oh.
wanted um, things that France wasn't willing to give, and France wanted things that England wasn't going to give.
Yeah.
So we're at a stalemate, so to
Yeah.
speak. And the Pope Clement is like, you know what? Y'all do you. I
Yeah.
tried.
You do you. I'm gonna go back
You
to.
know, I gave it my best try. I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't keep trying this. So,
Yeah.
in 1345, we're gonna jump forward a year because pretty much all of 1344 was the Pope trying to get England and France to agree to terms for a treaty and end this war altogether. It didn't happen. So the first major English venture into Gascony was in 1345. The Earl of Derby took several thousand men from England across Gascony that the French had moved, especially the parts that the French had moved into, because at this point, Gascony was still a part of England. It was an English territory,
Yeah.
but the French had started working their way in.
Yeah.
And
Can't.
the
Can't have
people
that.
that lived in Gascony did not like this because they actually liked being a part of England.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't want to really be a part of France. So the Earl of Derby, takes them in there and just goes in and does the same thing Edward did. He had the ability to pick the right people for the right jobs at the right time because all those French that had moved in, they were defeated
Yeah.
soundly. And then they tried to come
Yeah. It
in
tends to
with
be
a
the story.
counterattack. Yeah, they were defeated again
Yeah.
soundly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you think,
Usually, when the French go against the English, it's never a good thing for the French.
yeah, no, not usually. And you think this was just a less than 10,000 men that Derby had taken over there with him. So it's like, damn, this dude is like really kicking some ass. And
Yeah.
he didn't just kick the French's asses out of Gascony. They were trying to come back and get him some more, and he kicked their asses again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, want to try a third time?
Yeah,
No? Okay.
yeah. Third time's a
Okay.
charm. Got any more soldiers left? No? Oh, fuck you.
Oh, sorry, I killed you all.
Yeah.
So this all gives Edward time to plan, to make a really good plan, and assemble a mass of forces in England. So after he makes his plan, he knows exactly the route he's going to do. He knows what he's going to do. He has all these men assembled and he's ready to go across and kick some ass of his own.
Yeah.
So he does so. He sails over to Normandy, and all of the local people are shocked to see the size of his army
Yeah.
and navy. They just could not believe what they were seeing.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, shit, he's serious."
Yeah,
Um, oh
yeah.
boy.
And it's like, should we probably leave because we're just peasants and we already know how this war is going to be fought. They're going to come through here and burn everything down. They're going to steal all of our stuff, rape all of our women. And yeah, yeah, it's not going to end very well
No.
for us. So yeah, we should probably just dip.
Yeah, we'll catch you on the flip.
Yeah.
We'll see
Well,
you in a bit.
see y'all later. I'm outie. So Edward and his men, because they had taken this, it's not a short journey, it's not a long journey, but it's not a short journey from England over to Normandy. So they
Yeah.
rest for the night. And at dawn, as soon as the sun begins to come up over the mountains, they begin to pillage and burn
Mhm.
and destroy everything in their path. And we are talking complete and utter destruction. Archaeologists that have dug in the areas where this occurred can still see a layer of earth where it is completely scorched,
Yeah, scorched earth.
because that's what Edward and his army did as they were going through. It was just a complete, utter, total destruction.
Yeah, fear
And
tactics.
yes, they did this all the way through Normandy's wealthiest countryside, the wealthiest part of Normandy. They went through and just utterly destroyed it.
Yeah.
And at the end of July, Edward III reaches uh, Cone, Con, Cohn. I think it's
Okay.
Cone. Y'all forgive me if I'm pronouncing that one wrong. Um, and he accepts the enemy's surrender. So he accepts the French's surrender at the town, and they still proceed for 3 days, even though he accepted their terms of surrender,
Yeah.
which was complete and utter surrender. They didn't even want to fight him.
No.
They had no desire to face him at all. They were like, "Oh gosh, we've already seen what you've done. We don't want to mess with you."
Yeah, we're done. We're good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he accepts it. And then for 3 days afterwards, he still proceeds to torch, plunder, pillage, rape, torture, kill without care.
Yep.
3,000 of Cone's townspeople were dead, and barges were sent full of bodies. I'm sorry, not bodies, of loot
Yeah.
back to England.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So he had gotten so much stuff. Took it, sent it all back to England. Hey, we might be able to lower some taxes with all this
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
look at
Yeah,
this.
hey,
Look.
hey.
Let's get my
So,
popularity back up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You love me. I am your king. Look at all
Yes.
this good stuff. So Edward keeps moving inland and he's moving towards Paris. And he's continually getting closer to Paris. And Philip was trying his best to amass an army and get lots of people to fight for him. He was struggling a bit, but he eventually got several thousand soldiers that were willing to fight, and they gathered near Saint Denis. Edward is continuing his march towards Paris, and Saint Denis is not far from Paris. Um, from my understanding, I don't exactly know all of the makeup and
Yeah.
geography of France, so I'm guessing it's probably pretty close to France because of what's about to happen. I mean, Paris because of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So, um, he's just Edward is just marching towards Paris, complete and utter destruction, all in the way. Just you can't even imagine when they were. Because I watched a documentary where they were doing archaeology on this,
Yeah.
and just through the archaeology of them digging up, you can just see the destruction just through the earth that was done, and it is. I couldn't imagine actually being there and seeing the destruction after just seeing the archaeological sites that have been dug up and how terrible they looked. I
Yeah.
would not want to imagine what it was like to actually be there.
No.
It had to be
Bad news at the
horrifying.
office.
It had to be horrifying. So, Philip is not ready for battle. He isn't ready to fight Edward because he already know what's going to happen. Edward got his plan. He got everything situated. He got a good thing going. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And at this point, Edward is extremely uh, talented. He has a lot of experience behind him at this point, and he already knows. And Philip, while he's been on the throne for quite a while, he doesn't have as much battle experience.
Yeah.
He's been in battles, but not nearly as many as Edward.
Yeah.
So Philip is by no means ready to face Edward, and so he's just sitting there. He decides to sit there and wait. And so Edward sends several small parties of soldiers out to surrounding areas, and he burns everything down within sight of
Yeah.
Paris. So Philip is there. He can see over the walls of Paris. Everything around is complete destruction.
Yeah.
Complete and utter destruction. And his people, because of this, they begin to think that he can't protect them. And
Nope.
Edward might be their better choice.
Yeah, it's like, well, this guy's kind of just sitting in his walls and we're getting our asses kicked out here and he's
Yeah.
not doing much.
hmm
Shit.
Maybe we should hedge our bets with the other guy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're just changing a flag. It's all good, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Gee.
yeah. We
Mm,
just change it to the white one with the red cross on it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So at this time, Paris isn't really the capital of France. It is I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's not far from Paris. But it's at to that point where all the kings of France had been crowned.
Yeah.
Um, and Lord forgive me, y'all. I can't remember the name of the place right now. But Paris is still the largest city
Yeah.
in France at this point. But um, by no means it's not the capital of anything. Um, but for some reason, and nobody knows exactly why, But for some reason, instead of Edward going right into Paris and taking it, he turns north.
Hmm.
Yeah, nobody knows exactly why he did this, if this was part of his plan, if he was trying to bait Philip into coming out,
Yeah.
or, if he was actually just turning and going up a little ways and then he was going to turn back. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows the answer to that question. But Philip does follow him. So he is about 1 or 2 days ahead of Philip and his army to begin with. And Philip quickly catches up to him. Edward barely gets away because he's not ready to fight at this point. He wants
Mhm.
to get everyone together. He wants the high ground because it it's over, Anakin. I have the high ground.
Yeah, yeah.
We all know how the high ground works. And Edward wanted the high ground, and on his route north, he was at a more of a disadvantage than Philip was.
Yeah.
So he's trying to get all of his army back to where he wants them so they can have an advantage, so they can at least have 1 day of rest before they have to face off.
Yeah.
So he crosses the Somme. He barely gets across the Somme. And the Somme is actually what stops Philip
Yeah.
because they're not ready to cross it yet. And it wasn't optimal weather or conditions for Philip to pass over the Somme when he arrived.
Yeah.
So Edward had gotten away, he passed over the Somme, and he was good to go. He decides then that he's going to set up an encampment, and it is just outside of Crecy.
Mhm.
The battle is inevitable, and it will be one long remembered. And we'll discuss the Battle of Crecy in our next chat.
Sounds good. All right. So first of all, I want to thank Arlena for joining us. Is there anything
Mhm.
you want to promote coming up?
Ah, oh gosh, I've always got stuff coming up, y'all. Sunday is the only day that I take off, so
So
you can always catch me on the back tube on Tuesdays and Saturdays and some Fridays. You can always catch me every Wednesday with Arwen and when we do sugar and spice. Every Monday where we're doing Shield Maidens, and I'm not sure if we're doing Fortnite with the cookies this Monday or if it's going to be another Monday. But I'm everywhere.
all
Just look.
right. All right. And with that, we'll say thank you and
Mhm.
good night, folks.
Good night, everyone.